2013, the Metro Manila Development Authority recorded an average rate of 1.13 fatal accidents per day in the metro. And the city with the most number of fatal accidents is in Quezon City, with 141 accidents reported. In 2012, the Philippine National Police Highway Patrol Group reported the top causes of road accidents, which include drunk driving, overspeeding, overtaking, abrupt maneuvers, bad turns and reverse, or simply phrased, driver error. This is further supported by the report submitted by the Department of Transportation and Communication that states 79% of vehicular accidents are caused by driver error. Road accidents are the fourth leading cause of death in the Philippines, and unless these can be minimized, DOTC Assistant Secretary Dan Tilantin fears it might become the main cause of mortality in 2020. What are the responsibilities of a driver when it comes to traffic altercations? What traffic laws and penalties should motorists be made aware of? How can traffic accidents be avoided?
Good evening. You're watching Legal Help Desk. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we'll discuss your legal rights as a motorist and pedestrian, what you need to know about traffic rules and the corresponding penalties if you have violated any of them. We'll also discuss what you need to do as a responsible driver in cases of accidents and the like.
Our guests for tonight are Attorney Mary Ann Salada, spokesperson of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, and Attorney Emerson Carlos, Assistant General Manager for Operations of the Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA. Good evening, and thank you for being with us, attorneys. Good
evening. Yeah, Attorney Maan and Attorney Murph. Good evening. You know, this is one of the most requested topics in Legal HD when it comes to traffic altercations, because I guess it affects everyone.
Yes, and so, one of the most contentious, because I think a lot of people are still not clear as to, one, what the traffic rules are. May mga Filipinos generally tend to not follow certain rules.
And they don't know the penalties.
Yes,
no?
and the penalties.
Yeah. So let's start off. I guess in a way we've combined the LTFRB and the MMDA because in a way it sometimes it impacts both. No, like in particular we had a case. No, quite a popular personality, RJ Ledesma, went on social media and kind of blasted one of the buses that hit his parents' car. No? And that's an ongoing thing. No? So I guess first things first, no? If there is, for example, an accident and it involves, let's say, a public vehicle like a bus or a jeep, what are the remedies of a person who gets involved in a traffic altercation like that?
First of all, we will have to look into the passengers. So, are there any passengers injured? Are there deaths? So
that's the first thing. No?
That's the first thing that we have to consider. Now, what the passengers can do is that they can opt for the availment of our passenger personal accident insurance program. So, depending on the injury, they can get an insurance coverage from the said insurance program. At death, will entitle a passenger to 150,000 insurance. That is just the minimum that they can get. Now, there are, of course, depending on the fault, there may be liabilities, civil, criminal liabilities that, and administrative liability that may ensue. Now, insofar as administrative liability, that is where LTFRB comes in. You see, whenever a public utility bus or a
taxi, for instance,
public transport is involved, we always take into consideration the fact that they are engaged in public service.
And so it's regulated by...
Since they're engaged in public service, they have a public duty. That is why they have administrative liability, and that is governed by their franchises and governed by the franchising laws.
Attorney Maan, does this cover also tricycles, pedicabs?
We don't have jurisdiction over tricycles and pedicabs.
Okay. So only for taxis and buses?
And buses,
taxis,
jeepneys.
Buses,
How about
jeepneys?
MRT?
No, we don't have.
You don't cover the MRT.
So, but if, for instance, you get into a traffic altercation or mabangga ka, ng jeeps, buses, taxis, one of the remedies is to go to the LTFRB and complain and report.
Yes. Kasi usually, ang complaint will be reckless driving. Of course, accident will not happen if kung hindi reckless yung driver.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the questions that will be asked, who is the one reckless anyway?
Correct. Is that important though? Like you mentioned earlier, they can avail of insurance, let's say, for death.
But that's death.
You're talking about a passenger in a public utility vehicle, right?
Yes. Oh.
That's not an insurance of someone who is in another car.
No.
Who gets into. So you're talking about passengers
Of the public utility
utility vehicle.
And that
But
is
I
a
think-
no-fault insurance. So kahit na sinong may kasalanan, basta pasahero ka ng public
okay.
transport.
No fault
Yes.
insurance yun.
But
Alright.
if you're in another car naman, you're in a private car and then mabangga ka ng, from a public transport like a bus or a taxi, then you can report the bus or taxi operator to the LTFRB.
Yes, kung merong reckless.
Fault.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Your goal is to have the franchise suspended or
Because
canceled.
that's what hurts in a way.
That's
Yes,
the whip
yes.
against all of these public transport
Pero on top of
operators.
that, you also have other remedies
Yes.
for which you will need a lawyer, like civil and criminal liabilities.
Okay.
But let's go naman to private car operators.
Yan,
So
oo.
if it's between two private vehicles, yung altercation, how can the MMDA help, Attorney Murphy?
But in the first place, the MMDA would be coming in. They'll be, if they are the first responders in that incident, they'd be coming here. They would first secure the safety of the passengers or the drivers involved in the accident.
Okay.
And then later on, they would try to determine what happened, the circumstances that happened leading to the accident, which may be the basis of the investigation report, which any of the drivers, any of the persons involved in the accident would be needing in filing a criminal or civil case in court.
So assuming that everyone is safe, kasi usually ang priority muna would be anyone who's, I guess, bleeding or perhaps injured, di ba? Yun ang unang priority, I guess dadalhin sa hospital. I guess that's the first priority, no? But let's say no one got hurt naman, or it appears that no one really got hurt. The first thing that the MMDA will do is interview each driver. Is that how it's gonna go? Or ang sinasabi nila, punta agad tayo sa presinto. Punta
The
tayo
first
sa
thing that
police station.
an enforcer would be doing would be to find out if the drivers would settle by themselves.
Okay.
If there's no issue, and then they can go on. They can move their vehicles away.
Okay.
But if there's an issue and one is pointing at the other, they will need an investigation report. And to do this, they would have to go to the police investigator to investigate the matter, to make the sketch.
So
to
yan, required
determine
yan
who
yung
is-
stretch.
Yes, including the driver's license of both vehicles. If we are talking about two vehicles.
Okay.
Okay, so Attorney Murph, I think another contentious or confusing issue for most drivers would be they really don't know yung scope of authority ng MMDA. So they also confuse MMDA with the police. If there is a traffic altercation or a traffic violation, can an MMDA authority confiscate a driver's license or issue a ticket? Ano yung talagang authority?
Yes.
If
Protocol
we're
then.
talking about accidents, the authority with jurisdiction over this is the Philippine National Police. Because the courts would not accept an investigation report made by other officials.
So it has
should
to be a
only
police
be a police report. Otherwise,
So you're saying the MMDA, they're not technically police?
yes, we are not the investigators for traffic accidents. What the MMDA enforcer would be doing is to secure the area and call a police investigator so that they would conduct the investigation.
How would they know it's an MMDA enforcer and it's a police? It's the uniform
It's
ba?
the uniform. You
Okay.
can
Anong
easy-
itsura ng
Ano yung
uniform ng
itsura-
MMDA?
Our uniform is light blue.
Light blue, okay. And then
And then
they
a
call
pol-
a
and
traffic
then the-
enforcer would be something else.
Yes.
Either yellow ba yan or
No,
or
the
brown?
MMDA officers are light blue. The police officers are a little
Dark,
darker.
parang dark blue, right?
Dark blue, okay. All right.
And
Now-
I guess the best thing to do is just ask.
Yeah.
Are you MMD or
Yes.
PNP, no? But
Yeah, so-
here,
but
we
you're-
already know if it's a traffic altercation, one of the best things to do right away is to call also an MMDA
Yes, because
officer.
we have a direct line with the police investigators. We
And they
can radio
secure the
police,
area
yes.
first.
Now, okay, you mentioned, well, Karen mentioned the driver's license. Now, there seems to be a presumption for a lot of people that if you don't have a license or if your car is not registered, you are automatically at fault. No, that seems to be or at least most people think that that's the case, and therefore, kunyari ako, may nakabangga ako, and usually I say, oh, wala kang lisensya, even if it's my fault, you're at fault because you don't have the right to be on the road. Your car's not registered or you don't have a license. Is that the case?
That is not actually the case.
Alright.
You're just violating another law. You're driving without a license. You're driving a motor vehicle which is not unregistered. But that does not mean you are at fault. It just compounds your violation.
Okay.
And again, we'll go back to my earlier question to Attorney Murph, whether MMDA can confiscate driver's licenses and in what instances that can happen. But we'll have to do that after this short break. So Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guests, Attorney Maan Salada and Attorney Emerson Carlos. So Attorney Murph, earlier, before the break, we were discussing instances of when driver's licenses can be confiscated and by whom. So maybe this is something that we can clarify to our viewers because perennial question talaga to.
Yes, we would like to clarify this to the public. The MMDA, as a general rule, would not be confiscating any license. There are only a few instances where the MMDA constable can confiscate your license. And one of which is if you're involved in an accident, because we need to verify the identity of the persons involved, and the police investigators would be needing these licenses.
So they can confiscate.
They can confiscate.
In
But
And how
usually,
soon can you
after the
claim?
investigation, they return the
Okay,
licenses.
and how long is that normally?
After the investigation is finished, the
Yeah.
police officer would be returning.
So it's not
the-
actually
how-
confiscated.
yeah.
It's just
Not really
taken.
confiscation.
Just really for
Yes.
purposes of verifying
Yes,
the
but
identity.
for example, if you're driving a Colorum vehicle, that's an instance where the MMDA constable can confiscate your license.
Meaning wala kayong proper registration for driving a public service vehicle.
Without a
But
franchise issued by the LTFRB.
But
for
For
private
private.
cars, they
For
also
private
need-
cars, though.
Okay, so
Okay.
which brings me back to the
But
question later.
let's continue
earlier,
first. So one is in the case of accidents, car accidents, then MMDA constables can confiscate or technically get the driver's license for verification of the identities. What else?
Colorum vehicles. If you're driving a Colorum vehicle, if you're driving a vehicle which is out of line, and sometimes if the driver is unusually unruly or very abusive, that's the time.
And that's the call of the MMDA.
That's the call of the MMDA. They will have to issue a ticket in stating the violation, and under that they would be writing down that the driver is abusive and that the driver's license is confiscated.
Okay, but for violations like not stopping at a red light, entering a one-way street,
Obstruction, illegal
Can you-
parking, you cannot confiscate a
Cannot
driver's license.
confiscate
And can the
driver's
MMDA
license.
request that the license be shown?
Yes, that is the right of an MMDA constable. If a violation is committed, the first thing that he will do after stating his name is request the driver to show him his license.
but not necessarily confiscate.
Yes.
Basta it has to be in one of those exceptional cases in
Yes.
order for
For them
the
to take
MMDA to confiscate the license. But for non-MMDA officers, like for instance in Makati, I've seen some traffic enforcers there try to confiscate driver's licenses. Is that allowed?
Yeah, I am talking only of the MMDA because there are other traffic enforcers along the road. and one of which is the local traffic and bureaus who can confiscate licenses. The reason being they have no connectivity with the LTO. So that's their only basis for collecting the fines for the violation that the driver has committed.
Okay. Now, pardon the pun. I'll shift gears because you mentioned Colorum. Now, let's say the accident involves a public utility vehicle, and therefore, let's say it's Colorum, and then this vehicle, for example, is Colorum. It's a Colorum. In that situation, and maybe both of you can answer this, is there a presumption that the driver driving the Colorum public utility vehicle is at fault? Because technically, he didn't have the right to be driving that utility vehicle, which you said is a public service, and therefore would require a certain amount of regulation more than private vehicles.
There is really no presumption, but whenever there is fault, it aggravates the fault.
It aggravates the fault. Okay. And what are the penalties naman? Okay, maybe you'll go through this, maybe the penalties. No? Kasi, for example, if I get involved with a bus and turns out to be Colorum, I can make it painful for that for that person. No? Okay, how painful is it in terms of penalties if you are driving a bus or a public utility vehicle that's Colorum, technically Colorum?
Yes. If you are driving a bus and it's Colorum, the fine is 1 million. Now that is not the only penalty that the bus operator will be suffering. So they will pay the fine of 1 million. There is a minimum impounding period of 3 months. The CPC for which that bus is included is revoked, and that bus unit that was apprehended for Colorum operation will be blacklisted. So it will not be used in any other CPC, and it will also revoke the registration of that bus unit with the LTO.
So very heavy penalties.
Wow.
But for the benefit of our viewers, what do you mean by Colorum?
Colorum, the basic definition of a Colorum is any vehicle operating as a public utility vehicle without a franchise. Now we are right now, the LTO and the LTFRB right now are implementing Joint Administrative Order number 2014-01, which provides for higher fines and penalties. Now, these higher fines and penalties apply only to those apprehended by the LTO and LTFRB team. In cases when the MMDA apprehends a Colorum operator, their penalty will be in accordance to their own rates.
All right. Okay. Now we have a couple of questions, Attorney Mann, Attorney Murph, from our viewers. Our first question is from Patrick, and he asks: is it advisable to always take a video or a photo of the officer who flagged us down? Will we be violating any law if we do this? What if the officer uses this against us and will charge us for something more than the traffic violation we may or may not have committed? Attorney Murph?
On our part in the MMDA, we encourage motorists to take videos of the actual event, the actual apprehension, so that they'd have a defense for any possible kotong or for any possible illegal apprehension that our constables would be doing.
So the recent case recently that went on viral on social media, technically the drivers had the right to be taking a video.
If our traffic constables are taking videos, the drivers also have the right to take videos of our traffic constables.
But that's a very good tip. So I suppose there's already a memo on MMDA to always look your best because you might be taking a photo or video of.
Pwede kang ma-viral.
But that's very good in terms of establishing evidence.
Yes.
From Damon, what is the difference between illegal parking and prohibited parking? A barangay ordinance states that prohibited parking has no fine, and therefore the traffic enforcer cited the driver for illegal parking. Is this a way to solicit money from the offending driver?
I think it is. I think it is. There's no difference between illegal parking and prohibited parking. Based on the question, there's an ordinance passed by the barangay, and sometimes these ordinances and the traffic rules being implemented by both MMDA and local traffic bureaus sometimes clash. So actually, there's no difference between illegal and prohibited parking. This may just be a form of pangungoto.
Semantics.
And if you're member of a barangay, you belong to a certain barangay, and you already are aware that the ordinance that was recently passed conflicts with an LTFRB or MMDA regulation, can you report that to the MMDA?
Yes, please report this to the MMDA so that we can report this to the local government unit who have jurisdiction over their barangays in their jurisdiction.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Attorney
Okay,
Murphy.
thank you, Attorney Murph. Our next question is from Andrew, and he's asking, what are the responsibilities of a driver when he or she is involved in a vehicular accident? I parked my car parallel to a restaurant in Parañaque when another vehicle hit my side view mirror. The driver attempted to drive away but was stopped by the guard and several witnesses. She was very unreasonable when I tried talking to her and asked for her insurance details. She insisted that I was the one at fault and not her because I was the one parked parallel. There were risks, being parked parallel, there were risks involved and that I should have expected it. How can I prove that she was the one at fault?
That is the reason for the traffic investigation.
The report, no? Yeah.
Yes, the investigator would try to find out who really is at fault. And what are the duties of a driver involved in an accident? First duty is to secure herself, secure the driver, secure the safety of his passengers, and then report the incident.
All right.
Report the incident to MMDA
And the police investigators.
So the MMDA report will really state who the MMDA officer feels was at fault.
Not really,
Will it-
because the final word on it is the police
Okay,
investigator.
but he'll just state
But
the facts.
sometimes the MMDA constable would be making a rough sketch because the police would not be coming immediately. So the police sometimes base their reports on the witnesses, and the MMDA who first responded in the accident.
I have more follow-up questions on that, on the procedure that should be followed right after a vehicular accident. But for now, we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will be back, so stay tuned. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guests, Attorney Ma Ansalada and Attorney Emerson Carlos.
All right. So we've been discussing basically accidents, situation,
And I'd like to
traffic, and all
clarify
that,
quickly lang with Attorney Murph. When an accident occurs, what procedure should you follow? Because earlier you mentioned MMDA will do a rough sketch, but sometimes if it happens in EDSA na sobrang traffic talaga, and some people usually say, itabi niyo muna yung mga kotse ninyo. What should you really do? Should you change your area, or should you keep the cars as it is?
Actually, oftentimes it is the MMDA constable who wants to clear the area first because our first priority is traffic management. The problem is that people involved in accidents would want an investigation report made by the police and not by the MMDA. The reason being, if you present that investigation report made by an MMDA constable in court as your evidence, it is not the judge who has an issue with that, but the opposing counsel. They would oppose the authority of the MMDA constable who made that investigation
Are you saying
report.
it's inadmissible or hindi naman?
They're saying that this is inadmissible, and they want the only person who can testify should be a police investigator, and
So you really
that's the
have-
reason for this issue on who can make an investigation report. On our part, we want to have that authority recognized by the courts, by the lawyers, to in making this investigation report, because this would make our job easier. We can easily clear the roads. Once we're there, usually we're the first responders. Once we're there, we make the sketch, we make the investigation report, clear the area, make the traffic flow. What happens in reality is that we're there, we want to clear the area, we made an investigation report, we made the sketches, but the people involved in the accident would not want
To move the cars.
to move the cars unless and until a police investigator would come in.
Is there a different rule when it comes to accidents with public utility vehicles, or the rules are the same
The rules are the same.
for MMDA?
The rules are the same.
In
So
the
wait
okay.
for MMDA and then wait for a police report.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's discuss another topic or related topic naman to, Attorney Maan. No? Everyone's familiar with it, Grab Taxi, Uber, and there are some people who might have some concerns. For example, if they go on board an Uber taxi, if they get, for example, may pumasok, na hold up sila, or let's say they get into an accident, can they make claims? No, so perhaps you can clarify this.
Or in the
because,
first
yeah,
place, first
yeah.
clarify,
Yeah.
are these operators allowed, Uber, Grab taxis,
Yes.
these new platforms wherein you basically get the cab or private cars just through an app?
Okay. The point of view of the LTFRB is that, di ba, that is an app. So that app connects a driver, the operator, the provider of the transportation services to the passenger. Now, it must comply with the transportation and franchising laws, which states that all public utility vehicles, all vehicles used for public consumption for a fee, must have a franchise. So if you utilize a public utility vehicle, let's say taxi, tourist transport, or other denominations, then that is okay. For after all, in case of any accident, that the regulations of the LTFRB will come into play. Now the problem lies when you entrust public conveyance to a private vehicle that is unregulated. The rules and regulations of the LTFRB ensuring public safety will no longer apply. But you see, when you use a private vehicle for public transport, there is public interest at hand, which is being catered by public utility vehicles. That is precisely why public utility vehicles, the classification of public utility vehicles are made. They really have to have one agency that will regulate how these public utility vehicles, how these vehicles offering transportation services to the public are going to operate, so that the public safety can be ensured. So the main thing, the bottom line is, every time a transportation service is offered to the public, it must be regulated by the state. And how do we regulate it? We regulate it by issuing franchise. Now, insofar as those vehicles operated by these applications which are without franchise, they cannot operate. Because they are already violating the law and the core of the franchising law at that. But insofar as the public utility vehicles, I mean franchise vehicles being used by these applications, they can operate.
So in other words, for those using Uber or Grab Taxi, for instance, if they engage yung mga taxis or those that are already registered with LTFRB, these are not violating the law, even if they're using Uber as the mode to get in touch with the passengers. But if it's a private vehicle, then technically that's in violation of Philippine law.
And so if you have an accident in that car and it's not registered sa LTFRB, I can't claim the 150,000 insurance.
Yes.
Right? So, all right. Okay, that's very important information. Now, we still have a couple of questions from our viewers. All right, Joyce is asking, my husband was accused of drunk driving resulting to property damages. However, our car was hit on its back bumper and the driver of the other vehicle was a minor. The problem was that my husband's driver's license was left at home, so he was the one detained at the police station overnight. Aside from him not bringing his license, will my husband be implicated in this? So I think under influence.
Very complicated, no?
Very complicated.
You have here the Anti-Drunk and Drug Driving Act,
Yes.
plus a person who did not bring his driver's license, but then the other driver is a minor then, no?
Yes.
So walang
Minor sa harap,
license din.
tapos nabangga lang
We
siya.
have three complications.
Oh, yes. Okay.
First of all, the anti-drunk driving, is that already, anti-drunk driving law, is that already in place?
Yes, it's already in
effective.
place. The only problem is that the breath analyzers have not yet been purchased.
Deployed, okay.
Okay, all right.
So that's the only
so
obstacle.
And
to
it's the MMDA that will enforce
No,
this
it would
law?
be the LTO who would be, and the PNP who would be enforcing the anti-drunk driving law. And the MMDA, if they are deputized, we will also be authorized to implement the law.
So in this case, was it correct that because the husband left his driver's license at home, he was the one that was brought to the police station?
Actually, both should be brought to the police station because they are involved in the accident.
So even
Both
the minor driver?
Minor.
and the
And the
his husband, her husband.
oh, and the one who bumped, I guess.
Yes, all of them should be brought to the police station for police investigation.
Now, he was arrested, he was detained. Is that right? Can a person who, let's say, was caught driving under the influence of alcohol and got involved in an accident, is that automatic detention?
Actually, if, right now, if you're involved in an accident, you can be tested for drunk driving, and possibly that's the reason why he is detained. The police investigator would be bringing that person involved in an accident to a hospital to determine his toxicity level.
So he can be detained?
He can
And
be
for how long? How long is that detention?
I really don't know for how long, but,
But what is the remedy now? Let's say I drove, got into an accident, I was drunk, or I was under the influence of alcohol, I got detained. What are my remedies?
your remedies are one. The police investigator should be filing a case against you for drunk driving, and upon filing an information in court, he has the right to bail.
You seem
Now we
very
can bail.
concerned, Rod. You know,
Yes.
my advice, just don't
I'm concerned
drink
about
and drive.
I'm concerned about your driver.
Just stop it, Rod. Wag ka naman ganun. I'm just kidding. Okay, we have another question. Laura Lee is asking, I was driving my son to the emergency room because he fell and broke his arm. I admit that the car I used had an expired registration, but it was the only one available as my husband took our second car. I was not speeding, but somehow got involved in an accident. The other driver's car landed 500 yards away from mine. The driver, my son, and myself not seriously injured in the crash. I agreed that I will settle the damages since I did use a car with an expired registration. But according to the traffic investigator, I had the right of way and technically had no fault in the accident. The total cost is at 65,000 pesos. Is there something I can do to minimize my obligations?
This is now a transaction between the caller and the other victim. It's now a civil liability if it was determined that she was not at fault in the accident.
But Attorney Murph, generally, just because you're driving a car with an expired registration, does not that automatically make you liable for a car accident?
It is not a factor at all. What you're looking at is the accident itself. All the other circumstances would just come in later.
All right. And finally, from Margot, my boyfriend and I were crossing the street using the pedestrian lane when I got hit by a motorcycle. We're very near a hospital, and I insisted that I'd be brought there to receive first aid, but the driver didn't want to, reasoning that he could not afford to pay any cost that will be incurred. After 20 minutes, a traffic officer came to get a report and to take me to the hospital. The officer, the driver, and my boyfriend then went to the police precinct to have the driver detained. The driver had only a student license. His family later came to the precinct and offered to pay for the hospital bills, which amounted to 13,000. But they didn't. Not only did we have to pay the hospital bill, but the driver was later on released. Can I still file a case against the driver? What are the chances of winning this?
Yes, you can still file a criminal case for reckless imprudence resulting in injuries. Chances of winning this, it's a lot of chance because they were crossing the street using a pedestrian lane, and they were bumped by that motorcycle.
And of course, since she was brought to the hospital, she would have the medical records.
Yes,
to also
definitely.
prove the injuries. Okay.
And usually, in a case like that, you can't really force a person. Let's say you get involved in traffic altercation, you can't really force the person, oh, you pay my hospital bill. Is
Yes,
that all right?
yeah.
It's not really...
You have to threaten him with a case.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, okay.
Yes. All right.
And sayang, no, unfortunately,
Yeah.
I still have so many questions, and I'm sure all our
Yes.
viewers there have a lot of questions, but we're out of time.
Yeah, we haven't touched on road rage yet.
Yes, and actually, there are also other important issuances by the LTFRB, such as the huge IDs now required of taxi operators. But I guess we can probably devote another episode on that.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Attorney Murph from the MMDA and Attorney Maan from the LTFRB for helping us answer our viewers' concerns about traffic altercations and traffic violations. Thank you again. We'll take another break. Legal Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk.
Wow,
And
exciting.
today we had a very
Yeah.
helpful topic.
I know.
Helpful for all our drivers out there and those in the riding public as well.
Yeah, in fact, even lawyers I know don't even know the exact rules because we don't really have them on a subject specifically for traffic rules, diba, in law school.
Yes,
Diba? So
exactly.
usually these are just the ordinances, ganun. So sometimes even lawyers are not too familiar with the case.
To help all our viewers who are also drivers, one, when it comes to having your driver's licenses confiscated, as a general rule, the Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, cannot confiscate driver's licenses. So that's the general rule, but they can in exceptional circumstances. One of them is that if there's a traffic accident, they can technically not confiscate, but they can get your driver's licenses. And this is for the purpose of verifying the identity of the drivers, the car registration, and also just for investigative purposes. They can also confiscate driver's licenses in cases of public utility vehicles, so mga taxis, buses, when they are driving Colorum vehicles, meaning yung hindi properly registered with the LTFRB. Another instance when they can confiscate driver's licenses is if the driver is unruly or misbehaving or has displayed abusive conduct. So again, one of the things that MMDA can do is right after you commit a violation, they can demand to see your driver's license. Iba ang makita or to see your driver's license from confiscating. So for violations like beating a red light or entering a one-way street, bawal mag-confiscate ang MMDA ng driver's license for those types of offenses. But don't be unruly, because being unruly or being abusive of MMDA officers can be grounds for confiscating your driver's licenses.
Yeah, that's good.
And when it comes to local traffic enforcers, like for instance in Makati, they would have authority to confiscate driver's licenses because the logic is that they don't have a link with the LTO, so that's their only way of enforcing yung penalties for any of your traffic violations for their local regulations.
Yeah, so it's also important to point out that the MMDA officer will investigate, all right? But their report, their traffic report or their incident report, as of now, is not admissible in court. And that's why it's important for you to wait for the police. That's why if we are going to give a tip, if you are involved in a traffic accident, you're supposed to not move your cars or your vehicles in the position, because to allow a police officer to come and actually make a determinative police report and a traffic incident report. Because if it was just the MMDA, if you're going to base it purely on the MMDA's report, that may not be admissible in court, at least not yet. Of course, the MMDA is trying to push for its enforcers' reports to be admissible in court, but as of now, it's not. So you have to wait for the police officer. Again, the MMDA officers, you know them, they're wearing light blue uniforms. The police officers are normally working dark blue uniforms, or depends on what city you're in. No? Now, with regards to accidents involving public utility vehicles, no, it's important to point out that because public utility vehicles are basically applying the route, and it's being regulated by the government. No? So their service is technically public service, and therefore the rules on them is harsher in a way. So, for example, if you get involved in a traffic altercation or a traffic accident with a public utility vehicle, it's important to find out first if they are registered, if that particular vehicle is registered or has a franchise. If it doesn't have a franchise, you have a better shot. No? Also, it's important to point out also, this is something that very informative point, no? Brought about by our guest, Attorney Maan, that if you are in a public utility vehicle and there's an accident and you got injured, you can claim an insurance, no? A claim from the insurance. And if there's death, there's 150,000 death insurance. No? So those are the things that we learned today.
And right now we're flashing on our screens the numbers that you can call for the LTFRB, also the emails for LTFRB and MMDA. So very important, if you encounter reckless drivers of buses, taxi cabs, jeepneys, you can report them to the LTFRB so that they can, one, investigate these public operators and make sure that the proper penalties are imposed on them.
Yes, all right. Over the week, we have received some questions and comments from our viewers on topics we have previously discussed. Race sent her question on Facebook. I bought a plot of land 10 years ago, but up to now, I still don't have the title. The developer pawned it a long time ago and now cannot redeem it. What should I do regarding this? What case can I file? So he bought a piece of land, but the developer pawned it.
Yes. Oh. Well, actually, Race, one question would be, when you say you still don't have the title, is it a case of you not registering your deed of sale with the Register of Deeds? Because one of the things you have to do as soon as you buy property, land, house and lot, is to immediately register the deed of sale with the Registry of Deeds and to have that sale annotated in the original certificate of title and then secure a new title in your name. If you were not able to do that, I mean, even if you don't have a new title, if you were able to register your purchase of the property in the original title, then basically what you can do is just claim from the new buyer or yung dun sa the person to whom it was pawned by the developer and claim the property. But if you were not able to register the sale in your name, then basically it can happen that the sale of the land to this new buyer or the person to whom it was pawned can claim the property as a buyer in good faith, because again, it is the person that is registered as the owner that will prevail in this case. But what you can do is, one, file a case against the developer as well, because they are prohibited from selling the property that they sold to you previously, or you can also sue them for damages.
Yeah, you're right. Because when it comes to real property, transactions between the parties binds the two parties now, but the registration binds the whole world, meaning third parties as well. But in this case, since you didn't register nga, it doesn't bind the third party to whom the land was pawned. No? All right.
Okay. So now, let's move on to comments that we've received.
Okay, we received comments from Twitter, user @KDDu. And he tweeted, Legal Help Desk never fails to be informative. Most of this time, I learn more from it than I do in my classes. How about that?
That's great.
Professor
Maybe I should
Jimeno.
start teaching my
Professor
law classes here in Legal HD instead, no?
That's right.
Also from Twitter, @ChowFelipe wrote, thoroughly enjoyed your discussion on the separation of church and state with Senator Rene Sagisag. Hope there will be more episodes like it.
Well, there'll be certainly more episodes like that, and even more interesting episodes. All right, so that's all the time that we have for tonight. I would like to thank all of you, our viewers, who continues sending legal questions and sending your comments via social media. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may post these on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.